What is up, y'all? So today I'm going to be taking you through my language learning process, which is derived from a few different sources, and so far I'm finding it incredibly helpful. So get ready, stick around. I'm going to break this up into 6 different tips, so make sure to stick around for all of them, and if you're learning a language, try to apply them, see how it helps you. Let's go. So the first thing I want to address is to be really definitive with the goal that you want to achieve when it comes to learning a language. What a lot of people do is when they're learning a language is they just say, I want to be able to speak Spanish, or I want to be able to speak Arabic or French or German or whatever it is, but that's not really a specific goal. So what I've set for myself is within 3 months, I want to have a 15-minute conversation. And that gives me a very, very clear direction about what I'm going to need to learn and what processes I need to implement to be able to actually achieve that goal. And then in 2 years, I want to be doing seminars on stage in Arabic fluently. Because if you don't have a goal, you might waste a lot of time on things that aren't really important. So for me, I don't really want to be able to write Arabic. I don't think that it's going to be incredibly useful for me at this point in time. Maybe that will change, and I know some basic alphabet and some basic words in the writing, but that isn't exactly my goal. My goal is to be able to speak fluently, conversationally fluently, with locals and with people who are in Arabic. So make sure to set a defined goal. And then secondly, we want to take Paretos Law of 80-20, which is what are the 20% of things that get me 80% of the results. So if I'm learning Arabic, for example, I don't necessarily need to know the word apple because I'm probably not going to speak about apples as I don't eat apples generally in my day-to-day life. So I don't really need to know that word. And there are also quite a lot of different ways to say want or love or like or something like that. But what is the most universally understood one of those words that I can start learning today to just get me straight through to that clear path of my conversationally fluent goal? So it's not about learning exactly every single word because it can get a little bit overwhelming and confusing, especially in the beginning. Allow yourself to find the most direct path and clear words and phrases that are going to get you those results you want quickly, and then allow your vocabulary to expand over time. Because none of us are 100% fluent in any language that we have. I'm fluent in English, right? But there are so many words and so many ways to use the language that I'm not even aware of. But I'm very good at generally advanced communication when it comes to the English language. But I'm not 1000% fluent at it. So setting up an understanding about exactly what's going to help you and what gets you exactly to that goal. So being direct towards that outcome. And that will help when it comes to overwhelm when learning the language because you're not having to learn thousands of things that you don't need to know, that you're not going to actually use, and it's just wasting some precious memory or cognitive ability or cognitive space that could be used elsewhere. Now, the third thing I'm going to go into is something that I've taken from Scott Young's book, Ultra Learning, which is incredible, by the way. If you haven't read it, highly suggest getting it. And he says to draw a meta learning map for whatever your ultra learning project is. And how to do that. So first you want to break down that skill into 3 separate sections: your concepts, your facts, and your procedures. Now, the concepts are things that need to be understood. Okay, so in Arabic or in Spanish or French, they have masculine and feminine for pretty much every single word. So the way that you say something to a woman will be different to the way you say something to a man. And that will change the way that the words are actually said. So let's say in Spanish, hermoso is for male, hermosa is for female. And basic words like comida, which is food, you change the la instead of el, which is masculine before, to la, which is feminine. So those are basic things to be understood. Also, is it a subject, verb, object structure for the sentence? So I do something with something. So Josh picks up the book, right? In other languages, it might be a complete flip. It might be reverse. It might be a mixture of the things. So learning and understanding how the sentences are structured is also very important to grasp that concept in the beginning. The second is facts. So these are things that need to be memorized. This is generally vocabulary, basic phrases, that sort of thing. And a lot of language learning is going to be memorization. It's been said that if you know around 1,000 words in any language, you generally have a pretty decent understanding of it. So memorize a lot of the information and wait for the understanding to come to you afterwards. So I've gone through and memorized a whole bunch of different little phrases, a whole bunch of different words that might be useful and that I actually need to learn and remember. And then the third is going to be procedures. Procedures are the things that you need to actively do consistently. You might call it repetition in some sort of way. But these are the things that you need to get a really good understanding of that you can just go through all the time. So these are going to be practicing your basic phrases, practicing the pronunciation of the different letters and the different tonalities in the voice. So as an English speaker, there are some different letters in Arabic that we don't pronounce in English. And I'm probably gonna butcher it right now, but bear with me. They have an ah sound or a k sound, which we don't really use much in English. So learning that and practicing that procedure is going to be very beneficial in the end. Which brings me on to the next point, which is from a book called Fluent Forever by Gabriel Weiner, where he says to focus on listening. Now, when it's come to practicing my Spanish, I know a lot of words and I can express a lot of things, but it's very difficult for me to hear what the other people are saying. I went to Argentina only a few weeks ago, and it took me 7 days of listening to them speak to be able to actually hear anything. Before it was an entire sentence and it sounded like one word was the whole sentence. So listening to those nuances and the small details within the language is going to be very, very beneficial. So just like an opera singer, if they're learning an opera ballad, they will listen a lot to the songs to be able to hear the pronunciation. So you want to do this as well. And what I'm going to start doing is getting some basic phrases and basic Arabic and putting it in my ears when I go to sleep. So it kind of hits my subconscious a little bit. Not sure if that's going to work. I've been told it's a very, very good strategy, but let's see. And also listening back to my Arabic learning lessons is going to be very beneficial as well, because it just keeps that auditory sound running on repeat in my mind. So the next step is something I've taken from Anthony Mativier. He is fluent in multiple different languages and he's an all-round awesome character. Check out his channel if you haven't already. He is the Memory Palace god and a complete just accelerated learner in all areas. So he's amazing. Check out his channel. I'll try to link it in the description as well. But he says to pick one way of learning and just stick with that for at least 90 days. And in my comment section, when I said on my TikTok that I'm learning Arabic, people were like, oh, you need to learn this dialect. No, you need to learn this dialect. No, you need to learn the traditional, the classical. And because I'm learning at an Emirati language learning center, I'm going to stick with the Emirati dialect at least for 90 days so I can get the basic understanding and I'm not going to confuse myself with all the different dialects around the world. So stick with one thing. And then the next thing that I'm going to be doing from Anthony Mativier, which I've used for a long time, is the Memory Palace. But setting up a deliberate Memory Palace every single session that I go to. So at least 10 to 15 spaces so that I can take the main core concepts or maybe terminology or vocabulary that I want to learn from that Arabic lesson and putting it into my Memory Palace after. So during the session, I'll write down the most important things that I think I need to memorize and putting it into a Memory Palace for afterwards. So that way I've always got it in my mind so that I can repeat it and recall it in increasing intervals of time, which brings me to my next point, which is active recall and spaced repetition. What most people do when they're learning something new is they write down the information and then they try to study it later by looking at the information. But that is what we call recognizing information, not recalling the information, okay? So the difficult part isn't putting information into your mind, the difficult part is pulling it out of your mind. And when you have information on a piece of paper and you look at it, you're like, oh, I know that, but you can't recall it without the paper. Okay, so active recall is setting things into the form of questions for you to answer it afterwards. So let's say, how do you say, how old are you in Arabic? Well, it's kam amrik. Maybe I butchered that pronunciation again, not sure. But I have to pull that information from my mind rather than looking at the paper and still not being able to recall it on command. So practicing active recall. The good thing about memory palaces is it's kind of like mental cheat notes. You can recall them if you're in the bathroom, if you're going for a walk, if you're in the shower, if you're going to bed, you can recall them anywhere. So a memory palace is incredible for forming this active recall ability. And then spaced repetition is the thing that locks it into your long-term memories, okay? If you don't repeat information in the right intervals, then odds are that synapse is just gonna prune away and you're not going to remember it. So back in the late 1880s, there was a psychologist known as Hermann Ebbinghaus, and he systematically tackled the analysis of memory. What he would do is he'd find one-syllable nonsense words, things like yat and bok and puz and just strange words that don't actually mean anything. And he'd put them in his brain and see how long it took for his mind to actually delete that. And what he found, he plotted them into a chart that we now know as the forgetting curve. And what he found is that within 20 minutes, just as little as 20 minutes, we forget around 40% of the information that we learn. within a day up to 70%, and within a week, well, you can practically forget it, right? So you don't need to repeat 1,000 times for your brain to submit and think, fine, I got it. You can repeat in increasing intervals of time. So you only really need to recall it only a handful of times for that to actually strengthen the connection of that memory. So let's say that you listen to this talk now. Let's say in 20 minutes time, you repeat in your mind the main concepts that I've told you about today. Then 24 hours from now, repeat it again. And then 2 or 3 days from now, repeat it again. And then a few days after that, repeat it again. And then a week after, and then a couple weeks after, then a month after. And what you're doing is you're just like going to the gym. You don't get big biceps from doing one round of bicep curls. It happens from going over time to allow the muscles to actually strengthen, to rest. Rest is very important for your brain to actually reinforce memories. And just like going to the gym, over time you'll strengthen that muscle. Well, just like our brain, the connections that reinforce memories also experience atrophy. So repeating in increasing intervals of time is going to lock that into your long-term memory and make it kind of like second nature for you. So just after 1 week of starting to learn Arabic, I've had quite a lot of comments of people being like, wow, your Arabic is incredibly good. Wow, I wish I could learn Spanish as fast as you're learning Arabic. Well, you can, and these are the exact skills that I'm using to be able to do it. So make sure to set up a goal. Set a defined goal. Mine is 15 minutes in 3 months to be able to have a 15-minute conversation. And then 2 years, I want to be able to do seminars on stage. And then Paretos Law of 80-20. What are the 20% of words and phrases that are going to get you 80% of the results that you actually want towards that goal? And then draw out your meta-learning map of your concepts, your procedures, and your facts. So the concepts are things to be understood, your procedures are things to be practiced, and then the facts are things to be memorized, okay? And then we've got Anthony Mativia, which is focus on one learning source for at least 90 days and put them into memory palaces. And then we've got the active recall and spaced repetition, which is we recall it from our mind without the use of cues or external cues like on the paper, and then we repeat it in increasing intervals of time. And one bonus tip that I'm actually using to be able to memorize the vocabulary is something called a keyword method. So let's say that in Spanish, you want to learn the word hola. Well, most of you probably know what hola means already, right? But let's just say you don't. What connections can we make to that word? Hola, hello, has a H, okay? Well, now let's try and create a picture for hola. Hole? Okay, we can imagine a hole in the ground. And then how can we connect the meaning? Well, somebody's in the hole waving to you, hello, hello, can you help me? Hello, hello. Someone's in the hole waving hello to you. So now we've got a picture of that word and the meaning is connected and associated to the word as well. But make sure that when you're creating these pictures that you're making it really, really vivid. You're using your senses to engage in it. Imagine you can touch the hole and you can feel the hole or hear the person saying hello in the hole. And then also make movement and action because the brain is really attracted to movement and action. So when something moves, your brain looks automatically towards it. And you're like, oh, what was that? Is that a lion? Is it gonna kill me? Right? So when you add these movement and action inside of the pictures, the brain actually forces itself to pay attention to it because the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, especially if you plug your senses into it, as well as action and movement. So use that when you're trying to memorize your vocabulary, and you're going to find that information is just going to stick. And if you do forget something, don't get annoyed at yourself. Just think, how can I make this image stronger so that I don't forget for the next time? Because your brain will delete stuff. That's just what's going to happen. It's okay. But if you're able to create these pictures, make them emotional, make them weird and vivid, make action happen, plug your senses into it, you're going to find it's much harder to forget, and you're going to make it much easier to remember a whole bunch of different vocabulary. So I hope that helps. If you are learning a language at the moment, please drop into the comments section. Tell me what you're learning. Tell me which one of these points are going to help you the most. And if there's anything else you want to hear, please let me know. Otherwise, see you all next time and have a great day, night, morning, evening, wherever you're at.